After seeing the recent stripped-down versions of the Viper and now the DeathAdder Pro version, it's understandable if you were a little nervous that Razer's new Basilisk was going to get the same treatment. Fear not, the V3 Pro is everything we saw from the last V3 wired model, plus some extra stuff, and we've even got a new dock. But it's not what you think. Razer realizes that as lightweight performance mice have become more popular, you can't make every mouse everything to everyone. So this mouse today represents a new fork, where on one hand we'll have stripped down performance models, and on the other we'll have heavy feature-packed models where weight is not the primary concern. We don't really need to talk a lot about shape changes today because the Basilisk shape has remained very consistent since it came out. Still a right-hand ergo shape with pointed triggers and thumb support. It's basically impossible to not compare it to a G502. It is a medium frame suited for claw or palm grips, and the weight here is 113 grams. The coating is very similar, if not identical, to the V3 wired. It's that textured matte coating that's virtually fingerprint proof. Love that. A big theme for today's video is that the answer to every does it have this feature question is yes. We have chroma on the logo, on the scroll wheel, and on a ribbon that runs around the majority of the mouse, leaves you with little accents on the front, and then a really nice underglow effect. We have hyperspeed wireless and a Bluetooth mode. We have storage for the dongle on the mouse body. It uses the unified dongle support to connect multiple devices using a single receiver. We have all their latest tech, including the 30K Focus Pro sensor and the Gen 3 optical switches. These feel really good. We have very minimal pre-travel, and you only get post-travel if you have your fingers way at the top of the triggers. In a normal claw, how I use this mouse, I get no post-travel at all where my fingers hit. You still have the third sniper button on the side. It's not swappable this time. You just get what you get. For me, this is positioned perfectly. Side buttons here feel very light, barely any pre-travel, a little post-travel on the rear. Both of them have hard stops on the frame. These feel good. We still have two buttons on top behind the scroll wheel. The rear cycles DPI. The front handles the scroll wheel mode. In case you missed the V3 wired, we do have their new scroll wheel here that has both a tactile and a free spin mode, similar to the G502, but there's a new mode here called Smart Reel. With this mode, if you scroll slowly, you'll get a tactile feel. If you flick it fast, it'll go into free spin. When that movement is over, it'll go back into tactile mode automatically because there's an electronic clutching system in here that's software controlled. And of course, we also still have side-to-side tilt scroll. The free spin feels really good for productivity. The tactile feels pretty good to me. The Smart Reel takes a bit of getting used to because you can feel and hear that clutch catch when it slows to a certain speed. It feels weird at first, and you're either going to get used to it or you're not, and it's going to bother you. Big thing to understand is that it is software controlled, so on a system without Synapse present, you just get whatever mode it was set last to in Synapse, and you can't swap back and forth. I guess that's something we should talk about because there were still a lot of comments under the DeathAdder V3 Pro video where people still thought you had to have Synapse installed and running full time to use Razer's mice. That hasn't been the case in a really long time. If the mouse has onboard profile storage like the Viper V2 Pro or the DeathAdder V3 Pro or even this mouse, you don't need Synapse at all. You just set up your mouse once and uninstall it if it's a big deal to you. And people think that you still have to create an account and log into Synapse to use it, and that's not true anymore either, not for like a couple years now. You can just use a guest account. It will press you to create an account, but you just tell it no. For mice like this with software-specific features, or if you're using loads of chroma in your setup, you will still need to have Synapse installed, but especially for their performance stuff, nah, not at all. We still have the permanently attached side grips, and the glides under here are PTFE. We have larger glides up front this time around, and the rear has been repositioned where we just have this little curve. This reduces the distance on the outside edge without any glide, so while I do get a little frame drag on the outside edge on the wired version, I don't get that on this mouse. The main reason they changed the rear is to accommodate the puck. This is where your dongle is stored, but it also serves as a place to hold the new charging puck that allows for wireless Qi charging. Turns out those contact pins in the original dock didn't really stand the test of time because they're a mechanical connection. So yeah, the dock is back, but it's basically a wireless Qi charger now that also includes the 4000 Hz polling rate wireless connection. We still have the same sticky silicone base that you can clean as it gets dirty, and it's magnetic, so there's no need to mess around with getting it positioned exactly when you put the mouse down. This works a lot better on surfaces where it will stick to the desk, and not great on surfaces like a full desk pad because the dock just lifts up with the mouse. It's got 11 zones of RGB, and it uses USB-C just like the mouse. Some people had asked if the USB-C charging on the new mice is made only for Razer's cable. It's not. There's enough room to use any USB-C I had laying around. What you don't have anymore is the additional USB port that we had on the old dock. This was handy for plugging in a mouse if you were just going to use it short term for testing, but since this new dongle functions as the receiver, it doesn't need to function as an extender. Because it is a Qi charger, you can use this to charge your phone as well, sitting at your desk. I held off talking about pricing until we talked about all the new charging features because there's a lot of options here. The base mouse itself is set to be $159.99. Yeah, it's pricey, but I'm not surprised based on what we've been seeing. Up until a couple days ago, the Basilisk Ultimate with the dock was still going for $169.99, but there's huge markdowns today. The dock previously sold for like $50 by itself. Because it uses Qi charging, you can use any charger that you already have. The puck itself is $19.99 separate or $169.99 for the mouse and the puck bundled. It adds roughly 3 to 4 grams to the weight. The dock standalone is $69.99, and that includes the charging puck. If you want to get all three together, that's $199.99, and I think these bundles are only available through Razer stores and Razer.com. It's tough for me to argue value, and for consistency's sake, I can't really blast Glorious for their pricing and then wave this off as fine. Stuff is just expensive right now, and I've started doing a really deep dive into all the factors causing this in the market. It's a very complex conversation. It'll be a video for another time. The main takeaway right now is that if you want flagship anything, it's going to cost you. So now more than ever, I really encourage you to be happy with whatever you're already using. This mouse is compatible with the recently released 4K wireless dongle. It doesn't require this specific dock to take advantage, and even though you can't use the dock to charge the Viper or the Death Adder V3, those mice can use the 4K polling here as well. For anyone wondering if you can access those higher polling rates with the mouse plugged in, you can't. You're limited to 1000 Hertz, and there's a surprisingly simple answer as to why. There is no single controller chip in existence that can do both wireless radio and high-speed USB on the same chip. It doesn't exist yet. So to have high polling rate wired modes, they'd have to add a second control chip, which is more complexity, more weight, and more cost for a use case that's probably not a big priority if you're buying a flagship wireless mouse. In terms of battery life, there are a lot of variables here with all the RGB and the option for the 4K polling, so here's the important endpoints. With RGB off and standard 1K polling, you get 90 hours. 4K polling, you get 24 hours. RGB at the default brightness of 33%, you get 25 hours. And full 100% RGB and 4K polling, you get 8 hours. I don't have figures for max RGB and standard polling rate, but RGB really beats up the battery. Gaming performance, unsurprisingly, it does really well here. At 116 grams with the wireless charging puck, it's easily the heaviest mouse I've used in a long time. The heaviest mouse I keep in regular rotation is the G303 Shroud at 84 grams, but with a fast pad and a pretty high sends, you can't overcome this. All this footage is taken on the Basilisk with the 4K enabled. Especially if you're someone who struggles with tracking and stability with a lighter mouse, you may actually benefit from using a heavier mouse. If you're an above average casual player who needs a mouse to pull double duty as a productivity mouse, or if you play a lot of different types of games, this feels like a solid pick to me. So there's a lot to take in here. This is the first taste of what things are going to look like on the feature-packed side of Razer. I imagine some of these decisions are going to be very polarizing. There's just really no way to be a one-size-fits-all for everybody. There's definitely going to be people that wish the Viper and the Death Adder worked with the wireless charging dock, especially if you're going to run that 4K polling. I'm sure there's people out there on the older dock ecosystem, and to them, I'd say don't feel FOMO that you need the latest, greatest. The 4K polling is nice, but it's not the reason to reinvest a bunch of money if you're happy with your current setup. I'm guessing here, but any mouse we've seen from Razer before that puts features and functionality over weight, like a certain MMO mouse, for instance, will likely be a strong candidate for this new feature pack lineup. At the end of the day, love it or hate it, it's still the Basilisk. The core of the product in terms of shape, feel, and functionality hasn't changed that much. The V3 Pro is the final form, no compromises version. It's built like an absolute unit, and it's packed to the teeth with all Razer's latest tech. And if the previous high-end wireless version has always been out of reach for you, the deep discounts on the Ultimate may help you out with that. If you missed the other video I dropped today, you can check out the Arena 7 speaker system from SteelSeries right here. I will be back in just a few days with the Arctis Nova 7 wireless review as well. That is actually it for today, and I will catch you all in the next one. Stay up.